It's not often I have feel-good stories on this channel, but today is one of those days. The Handsome Her Vegan Cafe is closing. As long-time followers may recall, back in 2017, I put out a video called The Cafe of Confusion in reference to the Handsome Her Vegan Cafe in Melbourne. You see, they'd come up with a diverse and inclusive idea of charging male patrons 18% more to reflect the irrelevant gender pay gap. But it wasn't forced on you. No, it was up to you as a male patron if you wanted to pay it. Here's the original news story from August 2017.
A cafe that gives women priority seating and charges men more is making waves in Melbourne's inner north. The owner says the surcharge aims to address the gender pay gap.
If people aren't comfortable with paying it or men don't want to pay it, we're not going to kick them out the door. It's just a good opportunity to do some good.
They also had some other inclusive rules, like women have priority seating, and Rule 3 was respect goes both ways, which of course makes absolutely no sense since the prior two rules ensure that all the respect is flowing in one direction. Now fast forward about a year and this little advert appeared on some random person's YouTube channel.
My name's Alex and I'm the owner of Handsome Her Cafe here in Brunswick Moreland. We wanted to first and foremost have a cafe that was going to centre women and other marginalised groups.
Women and other marginalised groups. Yeah, let's rattle off a few ways women are marginalised, shall we? They live about 4 years longer than men. They are less likely to die of every type of unisex cancer and yet receive 80% of medical research funding. They are less likely to be victims of violence, less likely to be homeless, are far less likely to be a workplace death statistic, and much less likely to kill themselves. But let me guess, because there are more male CEOs than female ones, you're a marginalised group.
We have a few house rules.
Now, did you notice the renewed rules board? A little less than a year after the initial story broke, they've now done away with Rule 3 because I'm guessing even the misandrous bigots running this vegan shithole can't rationalise that respect goes both ways when the previous two rules suggest the complete opposite.
Women have priority seating. The second one is that men are asked if they would like to pay a premium, which at the moment is 15%, which is reflective of the gender pay gap, and that is always donated to a women's charity.
Now, when you think about it, this is not much different to how the government operates. Men pay more in taxes and women receive more in government handouts. So the fine individuals at Handsome Her are just helping facilitate the flow of money from men to women, just like our government does. And so with this in mind, now would be a good time to remind you of the Liberal Democrats' policy on equality, which includes abolishing all affirmative action programs. That's right, you know who to vote for come May 18th.
We want to try and reduce our waste as much as possible. So when customers come in and want to get a takeaway, they can borrow one of the mugs off the emergency mug box. It's really a place for people in the community to come together, to talk to each other and to spur some action. So passionate about the community in Moreland. I believe that real change happens at the grassroots level and at the local level. For these Moreland Awards, I encourage you to nominate inspirational women in the community. We all know incredible women who are doing great things, and it's time to bring them into the limelight.
And did you notice who one of those inspirational women was? Yasmin Abdel-Magid, famous for saying profoundly stupid things such as,
"Excuse me, Islam to me is the most feminist religion."
Oh, and last year they hosted their first birthday with two of Australia's biggest man-haters, Clementine Ford and Jane Gilmore. Now, of course, the major controversy with this cafe has been that they ask men to pay more, the equivalent of the current gender pay gap. And again, you don't have to pay more if you're a male, but obviously they've found enough gullible manginas to agree to pay more, given that they've raised $1,100 as of July last year. Many will and do say that the gender pay gap is a myth. This is wrong. It is not a myth. It is a real statistic. The argument about whether it exists or not entirely misses the point. The question should be, what does the gender pay gap measure, and does it tell you anything useful? The answer to the second question is unequivocally no, it doesn't. The gender pay gap is a meaningless, context-free statistic that tells you nothing about whether men and women are being treated equally in the workplace with respect to pay. How can I say that with such confidence? On March 5th this year, Handsome Her posted this on their Facebook page. Ever since we opened a news spread about our infamous man tax, we've filtered pretty much constant feedback from people who want to argue basic facts with us. The stats show that the gender pay gap in Australia sits at 14.6%. It's not as simple as pointing out that your mate earns the same as the woman sitting next to him, or saying but women like being childcare workers and men like being CEOs. It's about complex social and economic factors that leave women worse off than men over a lifetime in or out of the workforce. That's the discussion we'd rather be having. Now again, don't miss the forest for the trees here. They are right when they say it's not as simple as pointing out that your mate earns the same as the woman sitting next to him. You see, after years of pushing the line that women are being paid less for doing the same work, they've had to change their argument as they've been increasingly called on their bullshit. And it is complex to understand all the factors that go into why men on average earn more than women. Warren Farrell wrote a book identifying 25 different workplace choices that explain the pay gap. But here's the real hypocrisy. Since it is a complex issue, why use a meaningless statistic that is completely devoid of context to explain said complex issue? Remember, the stat they cite comes from the Workplace Gender Equality Agency, whose staff is over 80% female, by the way. But they don't calculate the statistic. They just pluck it straight from the Australian Bureau of Statistics average weekly earnings report. And in the notes to that report, they state clearly, average weekly earnings statistics show a difference in average earnings between males and females. This is at least in part due to compositional factors that impact on earnings and are not adjusted for in the AWE series, such as employee characteristics such as age, experience and training, hours worked, employment conditions, and occupation. Because of these compositional factors, AWE statistics cannot answer whether males and females receive equal pay for equal work. Also, as it does not collect the relevant information, AWE is not suitable for determining the causes of differences in average earnings between males and females. And yet this is the statistic that is constantly misrepresented by the WGEA, feminists, politicians, and the media as though it's a real problem. If anyone even brings up this nonsense statistic, start by asking them why men and women as a group that on average work different hours and in different occupations should earn the same. There's no basis for this ridiculous assumption. Now, of course, we have no idea whether the cafe is closing down because of their overtly misandrous policies. It may not have been viable from day one, what with innovative ideas such as the emergency mug policy. We do know that they raised over $2,000 via a GoFundMe, for what I have no idea since the campaign is no longer active. But here's what the proprietors of this now imploding business had to say. The owners revealed the cafe's imminent closure in a post on Facebook, saying they had expected to make a stir but receive more than their share of negative feedback, even from their own community. Now listen to the full quote from the actual Facebook post. When we opened Handsome Her in 2017, we expected that perhaps we might make a stir through our brazen public discussions of structural inequality and oppression. The man tax blew up the internet, an idea that we didn't think was all too radical. Yet the way the world responded showed us how fragile masculinity is and solidified the necessity for us to confront and dismantle patriarchy. We were just one little tiny shop on Sydney Road that was trying to carve out a swath of space to prioritise women and women's issues. And suddenly we became the punching bag of Melbourne and the internet. Ah yes, of course, remember the first rule of victimhood. Even when you're the bigot, you're actually the victim. And notice how grievance mongers always try to dress up their bigotry in some virtuous cause. The truth is you were trying to make money off man-hating, but you underestimated the extent to which even your own community would buy into your bigotry masquerading as virtue. When we learnt that it wasn't only men's rights activists targeting us, yet people from within our own communities, we encourage respectful and robust debate. We embrace conflict and leaning into the discomfort and think the world would be a better place if people would stop apportioning blame to others and start taking responsibility for their own contributions. Exactly. Now apply that reasoning to the gender pay gap argument and stop apportioning blame to the invisible patriarchy and encourage women to take responsibility for their own life choices. But sadly, I think that hypocrisy is too great for these idiots to comprehend. Now, this video is going out on Saturday, April the 27th, and tomorrow, Sunday, April the 28th, is Handsome Her's final day of business. And on their final day of trade, they are offering a pay-as-you-feel scheme from 3 p.m. until their stock runs out. So if you're in the area after 3 p.m., I encourage you to stop by, purchase some lovely vegan mush, and pay what you feel like. And if you don't feel like paying anything, then don't pay anything. And if they ask you why, just say you're making up for all the overcharging of male customers they've done in the past 2 years. As usual, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next time.